Harmony. It's a word we use to describe the pleasing blend of musical notes, the creation of a chord that is fuller and richer than any single sound on its own. But harmony is also about relationships, about the way people fit together, especially within a family. For a time in American music, there was no harmony more perfect, more seamless, or more successful than that of the Browns. At the center of that sound, providing its warm, steady anchor, was the voice of Jim Ed Brown. It was a voice that felt like an old friend, a comforting, smooth as silk baritone that seemed to carry no sharp edges, only sincerity. In the late 1950s, that voice, blended with his two sisters, Maxine and Bonnie, was an inescapable and welcome presence on radios around the world. With their blockbuster hit, The Three Bells, the Browns achieved a level of crossover success that was almost unimaginable, topping the pop, country, and even R&B charts. They were members of the Grand Ole Opry, international stars, the embodiment of a wholesome Southern American dream. But what happens when the harmony fades, not because of discord, but because life simply moves on? What happens when a family act, built on a foundation of shared blood and a singular sound, decides to go their separate ways? For most, that would be the end of the story, a fade to black on a successful but finite career. For Jim Ed Brown, however, it was merely the end of the first act. His journey after the Browns is one of the most remarkable and underrated stories of resilience in music history. It's a quiet epic of reinvention, of a man who had to learn to stand alone in the spotlight after a lifetime of sharing it. This is the story of what happened to the golden voice that, for a moment, seemed to disappear, only to find its way back to the heart of country music time and time again. To truly understand Jim Ed Brown, you must first travel back to the world that forged him. He was born in 1934 in Sparkman, Arkansas, a small town rooted in the state's timber country. His childhood was shaped by the long shadow of the Great Depression, a time when the virtues of faith, family, and relentless hard work were not just ideals, but necessities for survival. His father, Floyd Brown, was a logger and sawmill owner, and the expectation was that Jim Ed would follow him into the family business. The scent of pine sawdust and the rhythm of the mill were the background sounds of his youth. He even pursued this path formally, enrolling at the University of Arkansas to study forestry. But alongside the buzz of the sawmill, there was another, more melodious sound in the Brown household. Music was an organic part of their daily life. His parents, Floyd and Bertie, fostered a love for the songs they heard on the radio, particularly the close harmony brother and sister acts that were the heart and soul of country music in that era. The Carter family, the Delmore brothers, the Louvain brothers, their voices filled with the stark beauty of the Appalachian hills and the raw emotion of gospel storytelling crackled through the family radio, planting a seed. Jim Ed, his older sister Maxine, and his younger sister Bonnie began singing together almost as soon as they could talk. They didn't learn harmony from a chart or a teacher. They felt it, instinctively finding the notes that would weave around each other to create a single, unified sound. It was on the front porch, in the living room after supper, in the church pew on Sunday mornings, that the legendary harmony of the Browns was born. Maxine was the innovator, a gifted songwriter with a dynamic stage presence. Bonnie possessed a pure, high harmony that gave the group its ethereal sheen. And Jim Ed was the anchor, his smooth, warm baritone providing the foundation upon which their intricate vocal tapestries were built. In the early 1950s, what began as a family pastime started to look like a potential career. Jim Ed and Maxine began performing as a duo, honing their act at local functions and on small radio shows. Their big break came from a moment of pure creative spark. While listening to the radio, Maxine was struck by the call and response pattern of a popular song and had an idea. She and Jim Ed quickly co-wrote a clever conversational tune about a lover looking back to catch a glimpse of their sweetheart. They called it Looking Back to See. In 1954, the song became a surprise smash hit, climbing to the top 10 on the national country charts. This success was their ticket out of the local Arkansas scene and onto the stage of one of country music's most important platforms, the Louisiana Hayride. Broadcast from Shreveport, the Hayride was the famed Cradle of the Stars, a crucial stepping stone for artists like Hank Williams, Johnny Cash, and a young Elvis Presley, who was a contemporary of the Browns on the show. It was here, in 1955, with the addition of their sister Bonnie, that the trio officially became the Browns, and their journey to superstardom began in earnest. The Browns' early success earned them a contract with a major label, RCA Victor, and put them under the guidance of one of music's most visionary producers, Chet Atkins. Atkins, along with producer Owen Bradley, was in the process of creating what would become known as the Nashville Sound. This was a revolutionary and somewhat controversial approach to recording country music. The goal was to smooth out the rough, hillbilly edges of traditional country, the fiddles and steel guitars, and replace them with more sophisticated, pop-friendly arrangements. They brought in lush string sections, soulful background vocal groups like the Anita Kerr Singers and the Jordanaires, and polished the recordings to a high sheen. This new sound needed the right artist to carry it, and in the Browns, Chet Atkins found the perfect vehicle. Their smooth, flawless harmony was already more pop-leaning than many of their contemporaries. They were the ideal group to bridge the gap between Nashville and the mainstream. In 1959, Atkins brought them a song that would become the pinnacle of their career and the defining anthem of the Nashville sound. It was an English adaptation of a French song called Les Trois Cloches, originally made famous by Edith Piaf. The American version was titled The Three Bells. The song was a masterpiece of narrative and production. It tells the complete life story of a character named Little Jimmy Brown, chronicling his birth, marriage, and death, with each life event marked by the ringing of the chapel bells. What made it so unique was its structure. Jim Ed delivered the story in a calm, spoken-word narration, a technique rarely heard in popular music. Between his verses, his sisters' voices would soar in an almost angelic chorus, a wordless, ethereal harmony that provided the song's emotional core. It was dramatic, cinematic, and utterly captivating. The Three Bells became a global phenomenon. It didn't just top the charts, it obliterated them. It held the #1 position on the Billboard Hot 100 pop chart for 4 weeks, and the #1 spot on the country chart for a staggering 10 weeks. In an incredible display of crossover appeal, it even reached number 10 on the Rhythm and Blues chart. For the latter half of 1959, the Browns were the biggest musical act in the world. They followed this massive success with other crossover hits like The Old Lamplighter and Scarlet Ribbons, solidifying their status as international stars. In 1963, they received country music's highest honor, an invitation to become members of the Grand Ole Opry. They had reached the zenith, but the demands of such incredible success began to create fractures in the foundation of the family act. The endless touring, the time away from home, and the changing musical landscape of the 1960s with the British invasion and the rise of rock and roll all took their toll. Maxine and Bonnie, both with young families, grew weary of life on the road. In 1967, after a remarkable run, the Browns performed their final show and officially retired, leaving Jim Ed standing alone in the spotlight they had always shared. Jim Ed Brown was now at a crossroads. At 33 years old, he was a music veteran, a household name, and a member of the Opry, but he was also facing one of the most difficult transitions an artist can make. The music industry is notoriously unforgiving to singers from disbanded groups. He had to convince record labels, radio programmers, and the public that he was more than just 1/3 of a famous harmony. He had to prove that his voice, so long defined by how it blended with others, could carry a song all on its own. He approached this challenge not with a reinvention, but with a quiet doubling down on his own identity. He knew his strengths, that unmistakable smooth baritone and an innate ability to convey sincerity. He stayed with RCA and continued working with Chet Atkins, who believed in his potential as a solo act. In 1967, he released a song that would become his personal anthem, a tune that perfectly captured his easygoing charm while still being pure country. That song was Pop a Top. Written by Nat Stuckey, Pop a Top was a cleverly crafted novelty song about drowning one's sorrows, but its genius lay in its simplicity and its unforgettable sound effect, the crisp, satisfying sound of a pull tab can being opened, a sound that Jim Ed himself created for the recording. The song was a runaway hit, soaring to number 3 on the country charts and reestablishing him as a major force. It proved definitively that he could make it on his own. He followed this success with a steady stream of hits that showcased his versatility. In 1970, he released Morning, a tender romantic ballad with a lush country-politan arrangement. The song was a huge crossover success, reaching number 4 on the country charts and even cracking the top 50 of the Billboard Hot 100, demonstrating his continued appeal to a pop audience. He scored again with hits like the folksy Southern Loving and the upbeat Sometime Sunshine. During this solo ascent, Jim Ed also proved to be a natural on television. His warm, approachable demeanor made him an ideal host. From 1969 to 1971, he headlined his own syndicated television show, The Country Place. It was a popular and well-regarded program where he performed his own hits and welcomed a wide array of guest stars. Ever generous with his platform, he provided early national exposure to many future stars, most notably a young singer with a powerful voice and floor-length hair named Crystal Gale. His television work showcased a different side of his talent, proving he was not just a singer but a true entertainer and ambassador for country music. However, by the mid-70s, as the gritty outlaw movement of Willie Nelson and Waylon Jennings began to dominate the genre, Jim Ed's smoother style started to fall out of favor with country radio. His chart momentum slowed. Once again, he was at a crossroads, but another unexpected partnership was about to give his career a spectacular third act. In the world of country music, the male-female duet is a time-honored tradition. Pairings like George Jones and Tammy Wynette, or Conway Twitty and Loretta Lynn, had created some of the genre's most iconic and emotionally charged music. In 1976, RCA's Jerry Bradley had a feeling that Jim Ed Brown's smooth baritone would be the perfect complement to a powerful female voice. He decided to pair him with a talented singer-songwriter from Missouri named Helen Cornelius. The result was pure magic. Their voices melded as if they had been singing together for years. Their very first single, I Don't Want to Have to Marry You, was a masterclass in storytelling. The song tackled a complex and mature theme, a young couple facing an unplanned pregnancy, and the difficult decision of whether to marry out of love or obligation. It was a bold choice for a debut single, but its emotional honesty struck a chord with the public. The song shot to number 1 on the Billboard Country chart, revitalizing Jim Ed's career and making Helen Cornelius an overnight star. For the next 5 years, Jim Ed Brown and Helen Cornelius were one of the most successful and beloved duos in country music. They were a constant presence on the charts with hits like the bittersweet Saying Hello, Saying I Love You, Saying Goodbye, the romantic Lying in Love with You, and If the World Ran Out of Love Tonight. They even recorded a popular country version of the pop blockbuster You Don't Bring Me Flowers. Their partnership was celebrated by their peers in 1977 when they won the prestigious Country Music Association Award for Vocal Duo of the Year, beating out legendary duos like Conway and Loretta. Their on-stage chemistry also made them popular television personalities, frequently hosting the travel and music series Nashville on the Road. For Jim Ed, it was a beautiful return to the art of harmony, proving his voice was as powerful in a duo as it had been in a trio. But by 1981, both artists felt the pull to return to their solo careers, and they amicably dissolved their chart-topping partnership. As the 1980s dawned, Jim Ed Brown made another graceful transition. With his days as a consistent hit-maker behind him, he embraced the role of an elder statesman, host, and ambassador for the music he loved. He had always been more than just a voice. He was a warm, engaging personality, a man who seemed to have a genuine connection with everyone he met. When the Nashville Network, or TNN, launched in 1983, it created a new home for country music on television, and Jim Ed became one of its most familiar and trusted faces. He became the host of You Can Be a Star, a popular long-running talent competition that was a precursor to modern shows like American Idol. With his gentle and encouraging demeanor, he was the perfect host, offering guidance and a national platform to countless aspiring singers, including a future superstar named Alan Jackson, who was a contestant on the show. Jim Ed also found a new way to share his life with his fans through the TNN series Going Our Way, which he co-hosted with his wife of over 50 years, Becky. The show followed the couple as they traveled the country in their RV, exploring small towns and sharing their adventures. It was a charming and deeply personal program that revealed the strong, loving partnership that was the foundation of his life. Throughout these years, he remained a stalwart of the Grand Ole Opry, rarely missing a performance. The Opry was his musical home, a family. Backstage, he was a mentor to the younger generations and a cherished friend to the legends. He also hosted the syndicated Country Music Greats radio show for years, sharing classic songs and personal anecdotes from his decades-long career. He had successfully navigated the treacherous waters of the music business, moving from teen idol to solo star, to duet partner, and finally to a beloved patriarch of the country music community. He had built a life of stability and purpose, far from the fleeting highs and lows of the pop charts. In the fall of 2014, after a remarkable 60-year career, Jim Ed Brown faced his most personal and difficult battle. He announced to his fans that he had been diagnosed with lung cancer. He faced the news publicly with the same unshakable optimism and quiet strength that he had faced every other challenge in his life. "I've been in this business for more than 60 years, he said. "I'm not ready to quit. I'm going to beat this little thing called cancer." He underwent aggressive treatment, and for a while it seemed his optimism was justified. By early 2015, he was declared to be in remission. Buoyed by this good news, he poured his remaining energy into a project that would serve as his final artistic statement, a new solo album, his first in decades, titled In Style Again. The album was a beautiful and poignant reflection on a life in music. Working with his longtime friend and fellow artist Bobby Bare as producer, Jim Ed recorded a collection of songs that were both nostalgic and forward-looking. The title track itself was a declaration of his enduring relevance. His voice, now 80 years old and weathered by time and illness, had lost none of its character. If anything, it was richer, imbued with the wisdom of a life fully lived. In a deeply moving gesture, he invited his sisters, Maxine and Bonnie, into the studio. One last time, the three of them stood around a microphone, and the perfect, timeless harmony of the Browns was captured for the world to hear again. Just as he was completing this final musical chapter, the news he and his sisters had been waiting a lifetime for finally arrived. In March of 2015, the Country Music Association announced that the Browns would be inducted into the Country Music Hall of Fame. It was the crowning achievement, the highest and most sacred honor in the genre they had helped to shape. For Jim Ed, it was a moment of profound full-circle joy and validation. But life had one final, cruel twist. Soon after the joyous Hall of Fame announcement, Jim Ed learned that his cancer had returned with a vengeance. It was aggressive and had spread. His health began to fail rapidly. The official induction ceremony was scheduled for October, but his family, friends, and doctors knew he would not live that long. What transpired next is one of an unforgettable act of love and respect from the Nashville community. Knowing that time was running out, Jim Ed's friends refused to let him pass without receiving his honor. On June 4th, 2015, fellow Hall of Fame member and country music icon Bill Anderson drove to the Williamson Medical Center just outside of Nashville. He walked into Jim Ed's hospital room, where a small group of family and close friends, including his wife Becky and his son, had gathered. There, at his bedside, Bill Anderson held up the heavy Bronze Hall of Fame medallion. He spoke of Jim Ed's immense contributions, his kindness, and his incredible legacy. He then officially inducted him into the Country Music Hall of Fame. Photos from that day show a frail but beaming Jim Ed Brown holding his medallion, the culmination of a 60-year journey in his hands. He had made it. He was a Hall of Famer. Just 1 week after that beautiful, bittersweet ceremony on June 11th, 2015, Jim Ed Brown passed away peacefully. He had held on just long enough to see his life's work honored in the most meaningful way possible. So, what happened to Jim Ed Brown after the Browns? He didn't disappear. He endured. He reinvented himself not once, but multiple times, navigating the treacherous currents of the music industry with a grace and dignity that was all his own. He proved that the end of one kind of harmony can open the door to another. He found harmony as a solo artist connecting with his audience, harmony in a celebrated duet partnership, and most importantly, the enduring harmony of a long and loving marriage and a life dedicated to his family and his craft. His story is a masterclass in resilience and adaptation. It's a testament to the idea that true success is not measured in the fleeting moments at the top of the charts, but in the sustained dedication to one's art and the ability to build a life of purpose and meaning. He was a pioneer of the Nashville sound, a solo star, an award-winning duet partner, a beloved television host, and for over 50 years, the warm, welcoming heart of the Grand Ole Opry. His gentle voice was a constant in an ever-changing world, a soundtrack for generations. And though the man is gone, that voice and the kindness, integrity, and quiet strength of the man behind it will remain in style always. We're done for today. Thanks so much for watching. If you found this helpful, smash the like button, comment below, and hit subscribe for more great content coming your way soon.